The next step to symmetry was, after I graduated, I had no idea what I wanted to do at this point because I was so frustrated with my own limitations in terms of my lack of healing process, I should say, until I ran into a classmate of mine in Pacific Beach. Was running on the sand there, and ran into this girl who was in my class, and we started talking and was voicing my frustration, and she said, well, you know, I work for this clinic in San Diego, and they do this postural rehab stuff in Del Mar. And I said, well, what the heck, you know, I'll try it out. And they were looking for people to hire. So my buddy and I went and interviewed, and we ended up getting the job, and it was the first time that I had ever been introduced to posture as it relates to pain. Up to that point, in school, we kind of learn a brief understanding of posture as a whole, but we kind of, you know, I don't know if you guys experienced the same thing in kinesiology, but we spent maybe a day or two on planes of motion and looking at posture and orthogonal positioning. We spent most of our major on movement and action in terms of muscle action and function in biomechanics and things of that nature. But we kind of gloss over posture. But this was the first time that it was explained to me that my compensation patterns, my body's inability to hold itself in alignment correctly, led to the pains that I was feeling. And it was really, that was my second eye-opener, was because I kind of instinctually knew that when I was playing baseball, because I had known that there were certain things on me in my body that didn't seem right. Like my left knee was kind of in and my knee was pointing out, and when I had my cleats in baseball, the spikes, they always wore down completely on the inside, and they were always brand new on the outside. Every shoe that I ever had, I completely pronated, or everted is the technical term. So I knew that there were some postural dysfunctions, but nobody had ever talked to me about that before in terms of rehab. It was always, oh, your hamstring hurts? Well, let's stretch it out, let's ice it, let's patch it up and get you back out there again. Make sure you stretch. Well, I stretched and I stretched and I stretched, and I was in the weight room. It was myself and this other guy. Was only two people that were actually ever in the weight room. For baseball, we don't really pay attention to that much strength, but I always knew that strength was good, but I didn't realize that it was also bad, because what I was doing my junior year going into my senior year, now I'm not a big guy. I'm 5'10", I'm about 170. In school I was about 180 when I was working out. But I was bench pressing almost 300 pounds going into my senior year, right? Now, for those of you who don't know, that's a lot of weight for someone as small as I am. Now, I thought I looked good, right? Walking around campus like this. But the reality is that what I didn't understand is that I was walking into the weight room like this. And then everything I did was just exacerbating that pattern. And so I became less flexible, I became stronger, but I became less flexible and less functional. So every time I put myself through quick movements, right, like stealing second base, you lead off right here, and then your first movement's like this. Well, the first thing you have to do, right, is externally rotate at this hip. Well, this hip was already externally rotated, so this hamstring was already shortened. So every time I exploded off of it, that hamstring couldn't take the load and it would strain on me. But no one could ever tell me that, because I didn't know that. So that was part of my issues. And so I worked at this clinic, and this clinic was great in terms of its philosophy, and I really learned a lot from it, and I was really grateful to work there. So I learned a lot of corrective exercise, some yoga derivations, some isometrics that I had already learned in school, and it was packaged really nice with the exception of a couple of things. The first thing is that it wasn't quantifiable. So when we took somebody in as a client and they were in chronic pain, we would look at them and we would watch them walk, right? Which is great. But the problem with that is that if you get 4 or 5 of us here watching one person walk, are we all going to come up with the same conclusions? We're not. So it's what's called a subjective evaluation, which means that your opinion might differ than mine. So at the end of the day, when I sit down to write you a sequence of exercises, I really have nothing to go by, do I? Other than what I see. So I can kind of hit spots where if I can see your shoulder up or I can see your head forward or things of that nature, that's great. But how does it all relate? And that was the frustrating part for me, because there was no manual given to me to say, here, this is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. This is how you take somebody, assess them properly, and come up with a routine of exercises, sequence of exercises that specifically adapts to that person's compensation patterns, okay? Or corrects those compensation patterns.